My name is Goliath of Gath, and this is my story. The story you've never heard. You know me as the giant who fell to a shepherd boy's stone. You know me as the villain in one of the most famous battles in history. But you don't know why I stood in that valley for 40 days, taunting the armies of Israel. You don't know what drove me to challenge their God. You don't know the rage that burned in my heart every time I looked across that battlefield. Let me tell you the truth about why I tormented the people of Israel. I was born in Gath, one of the 5 great cities of the Philistines, in the shadow of conflict with Israel. From my earliest memories, I was different. By age 10, I towered over grown men. By 15, I was nearly 7 feet tall and still growing. By 20, I stood 9 feet and 9 inches, a giant among giants. My people called me their champion, their secret weapon, their terror to unleash upon their enemies. But I knew the truth. I was their monster, created for one purpose: to destroy Israel. You see, the Philistines had been at war with Israel for generations. We had superior weapons, better armor, advanced iron technology that the Israelites couldn't match. But there was something about these people that unsettled us. They had this confidence, this unshakable belief that their God would deliver them. And time after time, impossibly, he did. When I was 12 years old, I watched my uncle Lami march off to war against Israel. He was a giant too, nearly as tall as I would become, and one of our most feared warriors. He went to battle confident, proud, ready to crush these shepherd people once and for all. He never came home. A man named Elhanan, son of Jair, killed him, cut down my uncle like he was nothing more than a common soldier. The shame of it burned through our family, through our city, through our entire nation. But that wasn't the worst of it. When I was 16, I heard the stories that made my blood run cold. The Israelites had defeated us at Mizpah. Their prophet Samuel had called on their God, and somehow, impossibly, our mighty army had been routed. Thousands of Philistine warriors fled in terror from farmers and shepherds. Then came the story that changed everything. My father told me about the time, years before I was born, when our armies captured the most sacred object of the Israelites, the Ark of their Covenant. We thought we had won the ultimate victory. We had their God's own throne, his dwelling place, sitting in our temple. We celebrated for exactly one night. By morning, our god Dagon had fallen face first before the ark. Our priests set him back up, thinking it was an accident. The next morning, Dagon had not only fallen again, his head and hands had been cut off, lying on the threshold of his own temple. But the terror had only begun. Tumors broke out among our people. Rats infested our cities. Men, women, and children began dying in agony. The ark wasn't our trophy, it was our curse. In desperation, our leaders sent it back to Israel with guilt offerings, praying their God would stop the plagues. The moment the ark left our territory, the suffering ended. That's when I understood something that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The God of Israel was real, and he was more powerful than all our gods combined. So why, you might ask, did I challenge this God? Why did I stand in that valley and taunt his people if I knew his power? Because I hated him. I hated him for making me feel small when I was the largest man alive. I hated him for the fear I saw in my people's eyes whenever his name was mentioned. I hated him for the victories he gave to farmers and shepherds over our trained warriors. I hated him for the way he made our gods look like worthless pieces of wood and stone. Most of all, I hated him because I knew, deep down in my soul, that he was everything my gods pretended to be, and I could never serve him. You see, the God of Israel didn't just demand worship. He demanded righteousness. He demanded justice. He demanded that his people live differently, love differently, fight differently. He asked for their hearts, not just their fear. But I was a weapon, not a man. I was forged in hatred, shaped by violence, trained only to destroy. What place could there be for someone like me in the kingdom of a God who valued mercy over might? When King Saul brought Israel's army to the valley of Elah, I saw my chance. Not for victory. I was smarter than that. I knew Israel's God could defeat me if he chose to. But I could make him choose. I could force him to either save his people or watch them fall to me. For 40 days, I stood in that valley and hurled my challenges across the battlefield. Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. Every morning, I strapped on my bronze armor that weighed 125 pounds. I took up my javelin with its 15-pound iron point. I stood behind my shield-bearer and roared my defiance at the armies of the living God. I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight each other. But here's what you don't understand. I wasn't just challenging their soldiers. I was challenging their God. I was saying, if you're real, if you're as powerful as you claim, then prove it. Send someone to stop me. The Israelites were terrified, and I fed on that fear. Every day they cowered in their tents instead of facing me proved what I believed, that their God was just another myth, another empty promise, another false hope. But I was afraid too. Afraid that he might actually answer my challenge. Afraid that someday, someone would come who carried his power. Afraid that my strength, my size, my lifetime of training would mean nothing against the God who had humiliated Dagon and driven plagues through our cities. That's why I made the challenge about single combat. If their God was going to defeat me, I wanted it to be obvious. I wanted everyone to see his power, not just his people's military strategy. And then on the 40th day, he set me a boy. Not a warrior, not a champion, not even a soldier. A shepherd boy with no armor, no sword, no training. Just a sling and 5 smooth stones. When I first saw David walking toward me, I was insulted. Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? I roared. But as he got closer, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen in any opponent before. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't angry. He was confident, peaceful, like he already knew how this would end. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, he called out, his young voice carrying clearly across the valley. But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a boy. This was the answer to my challenge. This was the God of Israel saying, you want to see my power? Here it is. I don't need your weapons, your armor, your training. I don't even need a grown man. I'll send a child, and he'll defeat you with a stone. The boy reached into his bag, placed a stone in his sling, and spun it once. Just once. I raised my shield, prepared to charge, ready to crush this child who dared face me. The stone struck me in the center of my forehead. In that split second before darkness took me, I understood everything. The God of Israel wasn't just more powerful than our gods. He was the only real God. All my strength, all my size, all my defiance had been nothing but the tantrum of a child against the creator of the universe. I had tormented his people because I hated him. I had challenged his armies because I feared him. I had defied his power because I could never submit to his love. And in the end, he had answered my challenge with a shepherd boy and a stone, proving that his smallest servant was stronger than my greatest strength. So why did I torment the people of Israel? Because I was a man created for war who met the God of peace. Because I was a giant who discovered there was something infinitely greater than size. Because I was a champion who realized I was fighting on the wrong side. I stood in that valley for 40 days because I was afraid. Afraid of a God who was real, afraid of a people who had hope, afraid of a truth that would expose everything I believed as a lie. David didn't defeat me with a stone. David's God defeated me with love. Love for his people, love for justice, love for truth. And when love meets hatred, when truth meets deception, when the real God meets false gods, there's only one possible outcome. I tormented Israel because I knew, deep in my heart, that their God was everything I pretended to be, and I could never measure up to him. The boy who killed me was right. The battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. He always had. My name was Goliath of Gath, and this was my story. The story of a giant who fell not to a stone, but to the truth about the God of Israel. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. 1 Samuel 17:50.